halfway through this pile of paper here, I have a very significant surprise.
Okay. We're looking forward.
And you're not telling, are you?
I'm not going to tell you.
It looks psychedelic. We'll see. Coming through the That's right. And he'll burn. Yes. All right.
You're going to be so secluded. This is like the best aspect. Yeah, and the worst aspect.
Right. Because it's that double-edged sword.
So far, you can't get away without having
Should get started. First of all, I'm Bob Salerno. I'm the president of the Historical Society. And I welcome everybody. This is fantastic. It was about, what, 8 years ago?
Yeah,
9 years ago. Verne gave a talk in the library, when the library was over there. We had people standing in the middle of Main Street. We had people sitting on everybody else's lap. I was talking to him, I said, when did you start this? He says, oh, I started cutting stone at 10 or 12 years old.
Yeah.
So that's about, what, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, more?
At least.
And it's been his, I think, fair enough to say, his passion, as well as your profession.
For all that time.
And he's lucky enough to live in West Stockbridge. I turn it over to Verne, and go for it.
Thank you. Some of you have been to other lectures I've given. Some of you don't know me from a hole in the ground, but some people call me Bernardo, some call me Verne, some call me Locali. I spoke to you before about some of the geology. It was too many people in too small a space, and not everybody got a chance to watch and listen. But like Bob said, we have very significant marble in this area is because of the geological formations. It happened 450 million years ago when some of these continents collided together. If you want to know where we used to be, which is what this is more or less about, is where we came from. That's the equator. Here's about where Massachusetts was 450 million years ago. In about the geographic location of Africa now.
Right.
And 10 degrees below the equator.
Holy cow.
And as these continents separated and crashed together again and again, it formed the mountain ranges that we have here. The limestone and marble that we have in West Stockbridge was originally deposited on the floor of the ocean 500 million plus years ago. It buckled up into mountains about 450 million years ago when these tectonic plates crashed together again and again. Now we've been separated. Our original mountain formation, which were 14 to 18,000 feet tall, were as steep as these anticlines on this piece of marble, which was cut out of the quarry here in West Stockbridge. So our mountains were really this steep, and they were upwards of 18,000 feet tall. They've been worn away by successive glaciarization. That's just as heavy as it looks. Western Massachusetts, this carbonate area, this is where we are. You can see all the carbonates that are in Berkshire County is quite significant. People ask me all the time, why did they stop quarrying? Did they run out of marble? Well, you could measure the marble in Berkshire County and see what it looks like.
That's right.
I had all these printed this morning.
Yeah.
And these are our benches. And I don't think there's too much equipment in that particular photograph. But you can see it's quite significant. Here they started to undercut because you keep stepping the quarry and it keeps getting smaller, so they started to undercut. This is what the floor of the quarry looked like. It's about 80 feet down. Of course, you had to have a way to get there, so they built rudimentary step ladders.
Where's that, Verne?
This is here in West Stockbridge.
Where's the freely now?
Yeah, this is our little dog chain that's here. I usually have my dog tied up with it. He broke the chain and ran off. I hope some of you recognize the outfit that I have on here. The men certainly didn't have anything to do with safety regulations back then. And you see this long plank here. And what they have done is they have freed up a block. They have cut channels around the block with a steam channeler. And then they've driven feathers and wedges in. And these are feathers and wedges. This isn't giant. This is about the size that would have been used in the quarry. That's the wedge, and these are the feathers, or shims. They put a pair of these in these horizontal holes here. And then they proceed to drive these wedges in successfully. They would have a whole row of them, and they would take a nice little lightweight sledgehammer like that one and drive them in there. And eventually, it will pop the stone loose, because stone has no tensile strength. It only has compressive strength. So it just pops and will jump up off the floor at quarry. So they would throw one of these iron balls underneath. You'd bounce up and down, and then when you heave one of these iron balls in there, and they push it in as far as they could. And then the stone would kind of roll on it after they managed to get this, let's say, dog chain.
Oh, no.
Wrapped around it. This is an actual chain in the quarry. So it was fun work. And they got paid real well. They worked 9-hour days, and they got about $2 a day. And this is West Stockbridge. It's the Bay State Marble Company, West Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
Wow.
And this little building here has a little derrick sticking out to lift blocks of stone onto the train. There's an underslung block there being drawn by horses. And there's a few people in the picture. And the actual steam engine is right in here. It's kind of hard to see, but. And this is when some of the stone was being taken down to Philadelphia, where a great deal of the stone went from here.
Where is that seen relative to
In
downtown?
somebody's imagination.
Good question.
And the best that I can figure, it doesn't exist anyway. They invented this machine here, which is called a gang saw, which had numerous blades on here that were flat pieces of iron. And this mechanism here is on an eccentric, and it slid back and forth and back and forth, and they shoveled sand and poured water on it. And that gradually wore through the blocks of marble. This is what's left of a sandsaw blade. The tree wasn't supposed to be there. This is half of it. The other half is over there somewhere. But as you can see, it eventually gets so thin that it's the type of line kiln that we had in West Stockbridge. They were vertical, brick lines, steel, and they dumped the lime in the top of it, and they had either wood or coal fire at the bottom, and the coal fire would go up through and drive off the CO2 and out of the limestone or marble, and they'd end up with calcium oxide, and they dump it into a cart here.
Powder?
Powder, well, basically, the stone has no strength left to it at that point. It might resemble the stone that went in there, might be 2-inch stone, but you could just about crush it with your hand. And then they would take that calcium oxide, which is called quicklime, and sell it to masons and people building with it to plaster walls and to set brick and to set stone with, where they would mix it in a big tub with water, and it would rehydrate. You get extremely hot because it's an exothermic reaction, and it gives off a tremendous amount of heat when it rehydrates. And it would form into calcium hydroxide, which some may sound kind of complex, but that's what it does. Put that on. One of the other things that they did in cutting stone. And after they quarried the stone, they basically had to use the same principles to cut the stone again, either at a different location at the quarry or
It didn't take much.
these are little feathers and wedges. These are just little miniature versions of this giant stuff here.
You still have those stuck here and there all over the quarry,
So they
of all sizes.
drove these little, they drilled a hole in there, a series of holes. That wedge is a little tight. Maybe this one. There we go. They would drill these holes with a hand drill like this. This is a handmade drill bit. Well, the poor fellow would stand there like this, and keep turning it, drilling and turning and drilling and turning and drilling. If he was really unfortunate, they had a bigger drill, and they had two men. One held a drill like this, and the other one swung this sledgehammer like this, not like this, but over his head like this and down onto the drill. So usually there's a little bit shorter handle. But the poor fellow that had to hold the drill bits, while somebody did that, was called the shaker. I don't know why, but that was his name.
The other name, the prayer?
So, remove this stuff from this thing. We drive these little wedges in like this. As if they're straight. I'll split in half.
Look at that.
And it really didn't take much effort to do that.
That's a big
Quite frequently, a man would stand there all day long, beating out a piece of stone with one of these axes.
Wow.
They were very commonly used in the granite industry. They were used in the marble industry also. This is a typical stone mason's hammer for doing the same kind of things I just showed you there, a little bit heavier. Another very interesting old chisel that's just, or a hammer rather, that's just used to chisel the ends of the blocks off.
Verne, why did quarrying stop down there as long as you said that's still full of marble?
Well, mostly because 1929 came along. We lost 85 to 90% of the quarrying capacity in the United States.
Did the quarriers come from other parts of Italy, and did they bring different techniques?
Most everybody here in town came from the Verne Tower. Every bit of documentation that I found so far. Up in Vermont, they came from Poland, they came from Germany, they came from Italy, they came from Ireland. But here, they were mostly Italians, and in Lee as well.
Did they use different techniques by their background or the stone they were cutting? Or?
No, at the time it was pretty basic technology. Today it's changed. The quarry down here or in town had a similar set of circumstances. 3 or 4 men got killed down here. What was common was to overload the derrick. And down came the derrick and all the cables and the block of stone. And probably the block of stone exploded when it hit the ground as well. And, you know, it was just men working there. Some of our marble here has iron pyrite in it. Most of the marble from Lee has a tremendous amount of iron pyrite in it. It looks like fool's gold in the stone. It's kind of pretty. But the stone starts to rust. It actually turns a tawny color. Our stone does too. It has a certain degree of iron pyrite in it. But people prefer it because they want that old look. They want that
Right.
aged look. They think that that's actually the color of the marble. The marble's actually this color, but because of the mineral content, it starts to oxidize and turns that kind of creamy color, and when I get stone like this, I have to fake it, you know. I got buckets of rusty nails at the shop. Pour the water on the stone. Sometimes I pour too much on it.
Vern, thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Time.
Third Wednesday next week.
As heavy as it looks.
So it's safe, but it wasn't How are you? Yeah. Took it out of the way.